Hello internets, I'm Zells, the channel is Zellspeak, and welcome to the channel premiere. Come on in, grab a sweet roll, and make yourself at home. This is also the first episode in my ESO group dungeon quest and lore series. You and I are going to explore all of the group dungeons together, and we're going to do all the little setup side quests and talk to the NPCs and read the books. It is going to be a great time if you are a particular sort of nerd. And we're going to start in Auridon with Banished Cells 1. Approaching Banished Cells Overland, we meet Lady Elanway on the road here. Her quest is relevant to the dungeon story, so we're going to do that before we go in.
That silly, stupid boy. He's going to get himself killed.
Which boy?
My son, Sorendil, scion of the last High Kinsman, Rilis the 12th. I was Rilis's mistress, and now my son risks his life for some fool treasure.
What's he dreamt up?
He wants to prove himself to his ancestors. He thinks there's some sort of treasure deep in the vaults. Sor wants so badly to be a Rilis. I just want him to be safe. Please, will you look after him?
I'll do what I can.
We don't know each other, stranger, but you have a mother's gratitude for your kindness.
So the Rilis are...
The High Family of Firsthold. House Rilis has ruled this part of Auridon for centuries. In the past, it was known as a proud line of warriors. Until the last Rilis, that is.
So what's his story?
Rilis the 12th. They called him a despot, a murderer. He communed with Daedra, committed horrible acts in the depths of his palace. For his crimes, he's trapped here, in the banished cells beneath the castle.
Didn't he start the Mages Guild?
Ha! To hear him tell it, it was all his idea. Vanus Galerion, first mage of Firsthold, was the real founder of the guild. Rilis just allowed him to do his work in the city. I heard rumors he even bargained with Galerion for access to Oblivion.
So who's the current Rilis?
Rilis the 13th, the legitimate heir of the despot Rilis the 12th, Sorendil's half-brother, and current High Kinsman of Firsthold. He's a good man, I hear. Less scarred by the acts of his father than Sorendil.
One of the biggest strengths of Elder Scrolls lore is how three-dimensional it is. That means you rarely see the whole story from one source. There's a book here, a book there, a quest, a seemingly random line of dialogue about the Mages Guild, and you assemble it all together and you get something that's bigger than the sum of its parts, which is an art form in and of itself that I've always really appreciated about this game. So that's what I'm going to try to do in these videos, is to find as many bits as I can and stitch them all together. In the case of the Banished Cells, the story actually begins on Somerset with Vanus Galerion. So while we're doing these quests, in the background I will be going through the story of Vanus Galerion and the Orders of the Mages Guild. Okay, so, you've met the Altmer. You know what a ridiculously rigid caste system they have. Vanus was born on Somerset as a servant. The lord that Vanus and his family served believed that literacy among the lower castes was an abomination, and he outlawed it. Vanus's father was part of a book smuggling ring. He had taught himself to read in secret, and he taught Vanus how to read. The book smuggling ring got busted, and not only was he executed the father, his body was left hanging for weeks in the summer sun as a message. Vanus escaped, had some misadventures, ended up with the Psijics. And he stayed with the Psijics for a while and trained there. He ended up leaving because he was dissatisfied for a couple of big reasons. The first being Mannimarco. The second, which goes hand in hand with that, is the Psijics' own elitism. The thing about Mannimarco is that Vanus and Mannimarco trained together on Artaeum. Vanus was the one who caught Mannimarco doing necromancy and took him before Ichesis. And Ichesis, instead of doing something about that, whatever that would have looked like, exiled Mannimarco from Artaeum, basically unleashing him on Tamriel. At least that's the way that Vanus looked at it. He told Ichesis that's how he felt, and he left Artaeum. He returned to Tamriel with the idea that he needed to build an army to do battle with the undead army that Mannimarco was going to be building. But I don't think he was under any illusion that any authority figure on Tamriel was going to help him build that army, and I also don't believe that he ever forgot his father's body rotting in the summer sun. I think there's a nice parallel between his former master hoarding knowledge and causing the death of his father, and the Psijics hoarding knowledge and causing the death of untold people on Tamriel. So Vanus conceives of an organization like the Psijics, where mages and scholars and mystics can all gather together and train each other and pool resources and share books. But unlike the Psijics, Vanus's organization will be one that just anybody can join. Just anybody can walk in off the street and get access to magical training. He has to know the idea of maids learning to cast fireballs is not going to go over well, but he is 100% committed to this. Now, you and I have always lived in a post-Vanus Tamriel. Vanus's father died because he was part of a book smuggling ring, but you and I can hardly walk across a field without stumbling over a plot hook. Journal. This is a deeply literate place now. It is unusual to find an NPC who can't read and write as opposed to the other way around. The creation of the Mages Guild is the achievement of an illustrious lifetime, even in purely administrative terms. But Vanus Galerion isn't an administrator at heart. He's a mage. So it's possible to think of the creation of the Mages Guild as an act of magic rather than management. And if you think about it in those terms, you get a real sense of the scope and scale of Vanus's power, and why he is considered one of the greatest mages of the era, if not the greatest mage. Because the transformation of Tamriel from what it was to the literate place that we now know it to be is nothing more or less than the result of Vanus Galerion willing it to be so. But we're going to pause the story there because it is time to catch up with Sorendil and find out how he is doing on his quest to convince his stodgy ancestors that legitimacy of birth is overrated.
As heir to the name Rilis, I command the vault be open.
Sorendil, leave this place, bastard, or face the wrath of my loyal guards.
I'm your son. Don't turn me away. It's mine by right. Banished to oblivion, and the man still won't acknowledge me. Who are you?
Yeah, so I met your mom on the road. Nice lady. She said...
Damn it. She doesn't think I can handle myself. I'm a Rilis. The blood of Auradon's greatest warriors flows in my veins.
Uh-huh. Your mom mentioned a treasure.
The Rilis helm. It imbues the wearer with the strength of a mighty warrior. It's the birthright of my family. Been in the Rilis line for generations. All the way back to Rilis the First.
Okay, I see how this is gonna go. You stay here, I'll go get the thing.
No, I mean, you can't. It's in the vault below us. The vault is shut fast by a trio of wards. Each ward is guarded by one of Rilis's loyal captains, and only I know how to lower the wards.
Okay, so I take care of all the dangerous things, and you take down the wards.
Fine, fine. I'll even pay you for your time. Just remember, the helm will only work for a scion of House Rilis. It's no use to the likes of you. Let's go.
Likes of me. Well, Rilis or no, he is very definitely an Altmer, huh? Okay, so this is a pretty simple little quest. You can see there are the three areas on the map or where the wards are, and we're going to run around the graveyard and kill the poor skeletons. I genuinely feel bad for the skeletons. They are just doing their jobs. And Rilis is going to yell things like,
Don't let it get me!
and then that will of course not stop him from being super pompous when he takes the wards down. There's 1, 2, 3 of those, and while you're running around doing them, you're going to come across this little spot here has a quest, and we're going to come back to it later. But for now, let's go ahead and head back to the center of the ruins, where Sorendil's mom has shown up.
Sorendil, what's happening? What did you do?
So we meet up with Elanwe here in the center of the graveyard. Sorendil is Sorendil some more, and then we get to follow him into the tomb and meet his ancestors.
The vault is open. Are you ready?
Okay, so Rilis the 13th is currently ruling Firsthold. Rilis the 12th is locked away in the banished cells. We barely get inside the tomb when we meet Rilis the 11th.
Wretched child, leave this place!
But who hasn't heard that a time or two, am I right? So we press on, and eventually meet up with Rilis number 10.
Rilis has ruled here for centuries. How has that warped, twisted our souls?
How indeed, 10. How indeed.
Stop with your whining. It's my destiny to claim my birthright.
And then a few steps later, we can see Rilis number 9. He wants us to know that he is disgusted by the whole mess and is washing his hands of responsibility.
I am a Rilis.
Take it then, and see what it means to be a Rilis.
Stand back and behold the scion of Castle Rilis.
Behold the scion of Castle Rilis.
What's happening to me? Help me! Help! I am...
Oh no!
A
What's
Rilis!
happening? Oh no!
We warned you, tried to stop you. Only those with pure blood can master the helm.
Welcome to the family,
Not a
slave.
slave! I'm a Rilis! I'm one of you!
What was it we promised his mom again? Oh, that's right. I'll do what I can. Well, here's what I can do. And on our way out the door, we are treated to a parade of the rest of the Rilis family line.
I convinced my brother to wear the helm, and then led the mob who killed him.
He's a thinker. He's my favorite. Here's number 4.
Mother wore the helm after father died. We never found her body.
And here's number 3.
I wore the helm at the Battle of 10 Mars. I slew my son with my bare hands.
And Rilis the second.
Uncle hid the helm from me for years. I ripped his throat out on my birthday.
And Rilis the first.
The helm is our power source, and our curse. Only a true son of Rilis can wear the helm. Now, be gone!
So we're gonna head out here and tell Sorendel's mom that we did what we could. Fortunately, we're experienced heroes, and we knew better than to promise more than that.
The guards are quiet again. Something's happened. Where's my son? Where's Sorendil?
I'm sorry, he's gone.
Gone? How? What happened down there?
What happened is that I did what I could.
You did what you could. I somehow knew it would end this way. Thank you for listening to a mother's plea. I'd like to be alone now.
Before we leave this little area, you may be asking yourself, with those people buried with honor in the family tomb, what could Rilis the 12th possibly have done to get himself thrown into super bad guy jail? And the answer actually is that little quest that we skipped earlier. So before we leave entirely, we're going to head back and do that.
Hey there, ever spend any time staring at your own corpse? I don't recommend it.
Oh, you wouldn't even.
Falarel happened. The arcane jester to the cruel Rilis the 12th. I didn't appreciate his act. So he tortured me to death and trapped my soul.
Dude.
What? You'd help me. Thank you. I used to be a mage. There's a soul totem on my body here. My soul is down in the playroom just through that door. Banish Falarel and capture my soul, then bring it back to me.
Did you say playroom? Okay, let's go over the keywords here. Evil jester, playroom, tortured to death. Evil clown is storytelling shorthand. What just happened here is the story reached out and took you by the hand and looked you deep in the eyes and said, Rilis the 12th is the absolute worst. So yeah, here we are in the playroom, and evil clown spirit, torture chamber, playroom. Look, if you need me to explain to you why this is wrong, You have bigger problems than I can help with. You need to pause the video and go look to that. Meanwhile, the rest of us are going to shudder in horror and nod in tacit understanding that hiring evil clowns is exactly the sort of behavior that should get one thrown in super bad guy jail.
So, how did it go?
So there you have it. Rilis the 12th in context. Even against the backdrop of his homicidal, backstabbing, kin-killing family, he is notably broken. Just for him, they moved the other prisoners out of the banished cells and put up special wards. And on that note, I have heard people joke about how funny it is that we're walking into a high-security prison as a group just to see what's going on. But it isn't exactly a random walk-in. Let's go back and take another look at what was happening when we came into the cemetery.
As heir to the name Rilis, I command the vault be open.
Surrendel, leave this place, bastard, or face the wrath of my loyal guards.
I'm your son. Don't turn me away. It's mine by right.
That was the voice of Rilis the 12th, speaking with Surrendel and either attacking him directly or somehow causing a magical backlash that disrupted Surrendel's spell and knocked him back. It seems like being in super bad guy jail should preclude one from those activities, right? So let's go see how that cell is holding up. We've already discussed how the Altmer nobility would not be excited about the idea of a mages guild in town, but the commoners really weren't excited either. Up to that point, mages had lived in isolation, usually, away from towns in case their experiments, they exploded or whatever. Since most commoners can't cast magic, commoners and nobles alike were nervous about having the guild in town. It was being referred to as Galerion's folly. But the location was a sticking point for Vanus. He wanted the guild to be in town, because if the books live outside of town, the gardener's son can't stop by and read a chapter after chores on his way home to bed. But everyone was so nervous about Galerion's folly that he was called to explain himself before a conclave of Altmer elite, including Psijic Rightmaster Ichesis and High-Kin Lord Rilis the 12th, who was still in power and as sane at that point as any Rilis can ever be. Before he even started, Vanus had to know that very early in, his would-be authority figures were going to want him to explain himself. Vanus Galerion, whose father was killed for smuggling books, did not walk unprepared into that conclave. We don't know what happened there, or what plans Vanus made before he went in. I'm going to speculate a little bit about that later. But first, with that context, let us walk at last into the dungeon I promised you 18-some minutes ago. Here we are in the banished cells. Knock knock, anybody home? There's this crazy kid outside beating on the Uh-oh, fight. Oh, it's okay. It's just 3 Banekin. We'll just let him take care of that. It's 3 Banekin. Dude, just kill him. Okay, fine. He's a guard in a prison designed to hold a Daedra worshipper, and he can't take down 3 Banekin. I would feel so much better about him if there were stacks of dead Daedra bodies in this room. If he were Dunmer, I would assume he poisoned his way to this position. But since he's Altmer, I'm going to go with nepotism.
Well met. I thank you for the assistance, but this place is teeming with Daedra. You should leave, if you value your life.
Whose son-in-law are you?
I am Keeper Sirion, Warden of the Banished Cells. The Daedra have helped my prisoner, High-Kin Lord Rilis the 12th, to escape his prison. Rilis is an immortal phantom who wields powerful magic. You should return to the surface and warn Tamriel.
It's okay, I got this.
You're serious? I've mentioned the swarms of Daedra, have I not? There are, if you're willing to risk your life, there are other keepers who may need help. I imagine the High Kin Lord said more against us than the Banekin who harangued me.
Yeah, I'm guessing so.
3 of my comrades remain somewhere in these halls. They serve as keepers under me, sworn to guard the High Kin Lord's prison for as long as they are able. Find them, and help them if they live.
So where are we?
In ages past, the vilest of my people were interred here as punishment. Today, the banished cells contain a sole prisoner, High Kinlord Rilis the 12th. Rilis is long dead, but his Daedric pact sustains him, and a prisoner he remained until today.
Rilis the 12th, huh?
The tale is well known in these parts. In his youth, High Kinlord Rilis was a hero, instrumental in bringing order to this region. However, Rilis's thirst for power, which drove him to perform great feats, was his undoing.
And?
He consorted with Oblivion to ascend to power. Those who stood in his way he killed, though always under mysterious circumstances. Eventually, those around him saw through his schemes and imprisoned him. Lifetimes have passed, but Rilis remains.
So he's a lich, or...
Rilis's pact with the Daedra keeps him chained to Nirn, though he is dead. Were it not for the Daedra who freed him, he would be serving his sentence still, until time immemorial.
So where are the Keepers?
I have not seen them since the Daedra attacked. Araldor is the closest, and if she lives, you'll find her up ahead.
Yeah, I'll look for Eldor. And right over here we have a lore book. Lore books in the first room of a dungeon are always relevant to the dungeon, so let's take a look and see what that says. Ah, Sirion's reading up on binding stones. We have a bit of business to discuss about a few things, including the timeline, but before we do that, let's wave a magic editing wand and get rid of these skeletons so that we can go forward and read Part 1 of the Manifesto of High Kinlord Rilis the 12th. Let's talk about the timeline real quick. Sirion just said lifetimes, but Ilanwe outside was a contemporary of our 12s, so where are we? The Imperial Charter of the Mages Guild is a book that's available in the solo games. It records the Mages Guild date of founding as Second Era, year 320. ESO is set approximately in Second Era, year 580-ish. Which means it's been about 260 years. Now that's a while, but it isn't lifetimes to an Altmer. Regardless of how long Sirion thinks it's been, we know that under 300 years ago, Vanus Galerion was called before a conclave to explain his newly formed Mages Guild. There were other Psijics at the conclave besides Aekesis, and there were other nobles at the conclave besides Rilis the 12th. But because the guild was forming in Firsthold, Rilis's territory, it was his say that mattered the most. Basically, Vanus asked if he could set up his ticking time bomb of a social experiment right in the middle of the crown jewel of the Rilis family holdings. And our 12 said, sure, go right ahead. The book we find in Firsthold tells us that Rilis the 12th agreed as a political move, a way to play the mages off against the commoners. But Ilanwe gave us another reason right up front. One that's a little more gossip than spin, but probably also a little more accurate.
Vanus Galerion, first mage of Firsthold, was the real founder of the guild. Rilis just allowed him to do his work in the city. I heard rumors he even bargained with Galerion for access to Oblivion.
Back in our dungeon, we have found the first keeper, Eraldor, and our first boss, because it took a boss and full entourage, just saying. Let's go ahead and take care of these bad guys, and Sirion is going to walk in and start proclaiming things.
Eraldor, you live!
I do, though I've seen better days. The High Kinlord's power has grown. He would not have been able to escape our predecessors as he has escaped us today. We need to go after him.
Stay down, Keeper! You're injured! If the others yet live, we should find them, then deal with Rilis, if we can. He has already escaped. I will not suffer further dishonor by losing lives to him.
You're ever the optimist. An Altmer should not fear the end, Sirion. I would give the lives of all 4 of us to stop Rilis. The High Kinlord will rend Tamriel apart if he gets to the surface. And it will be our fault.
There is a difference between fearing death and throwing your life away. Aruldar, and as long as I lead the Keepers, you will do neither. If the others live, we'll find them. You've helped more than I could have hoped, stranger. Aruldar will survive this.
So what's your plan?
Aruldar would like nothing more than to confront Rilis now, but we're not ready. The High Kin Lord can't be killed. Our only course is to capture him. But we'll need a sturdier prison than we've ever had before.
And what do you need from me?
Aruldar and I will think on a plan to deal with the High Kin Lord. Defeating Rilis is pointless if we can't hold him. In the meantime, the area up ahead is under Keeper Varanil's jurisdiction. Even if he lives, he'll need your help.
I'll look for Varanil. Rilis the 12th isn't the same flavor of crazy as the rest of his family. He isn't buried with them, and we didn't hear rumors of him killing a family member. He was known to be ambitious, but apparently he didn't do the one thing every Rilis did before him and put on the helm. We don't know what happened, but I think Vanus went to Rilis and said something like this. I know you're an ambitious guy, but you and I both know that ancestral helm of yours is a booby trap from Clavicus Vile. The problem is that your ancestor just wasn't as smart as you. If you had negotiated that deal, you'd have all the power you wanted right now. I'll tell you what, you let me have my totally inconsequential little book club, and I'll see that you get access to all the power you can use. And R12 said, I really don't see the downside. After all, after I have all the power that befits me, I'll be able to kill you and all of the uppity trash that collects under your skirts in the meantime. And Vanus said, That's the spirit. You know, I just happen to have a contract on me. If you could just sign here and here, I need initials on these 3 pages. This one's a building renovation permit. This is a requisition for some alchemy supplies out of the lab. Rilis the 12th had many problematic qualities as a ruler. He was a despot, a murderer. He had an evil clown on staff. But the thing that got him thrown in super bad guy jail was Daedra worship. And this room is a fine illustration of why. Remember, the Altmer think that they are descended directly from the Aedra, the makers of reality. The king is the land and the land is the king is the DNA for their entire culture.
What delightful folly is this? The Keepers have enlisted an outsider to face me? You fools have fallen so low! There are easier ways to prove your bravery, mortal. Turn back, or you'll share the Keeper's fate.
This place we're in, these Ayleid ruins, are Rilis' ancestral land. To put that another way, it is the physical expression of the strength of Rilis the 12th's ancestors. It represents his genetic link to reality and his personal and cultural dominion over Nirn. It is his birthright, the bedrock of his power, his inheritance, and the legacy he leaves his descendants. And he bargained it all away to Molag Bal, who is turning it into insubstantial Cold Harbor goo. Sirion thinks that's obscene. It's easy to see why. Earlier, Ereldor said that R12 wouldn't have been able to escape the previous Keepers, as he did today, and she's right. In the main quest backstory, Mannimarco tricked Varen Aquilarius into tearing a hole in the ward that Akatosh made to protect Nirn as part of his covenant with Alessia. With the ward damaged, Molag Bal initiated the plane meld. Dolmens are opening up all over Tamriel because Molag Bal is teaching his cultists how to summon the portals. So R12 is more powerful now, because he's in more direct contact with Molag Bal. And that portal that we saw back there, that portal ring in the ceiling, was one that Rilis himself summoned. So the plane meld is probably the single biggest reason that R12 escaped, but as long as we're on the subject, Sorendil's been outside tapping around on the wards, trying to make a connection with his ancestors and hear Daddy say I love you. Do you suppose that had any effect? I mean, I don't know. These are just the questions I ask. And now here we are at Veronal, and the boss and roomful of Daedra it took to subdue him.
It's Veronal! Haroldor! See to him!
By the Empyrean light. Let's hope he lives.
Has he been slain?
He's not the model of well-being, but he lives. Are you satisfied, Syrian? I'm eager to pursue the High Kinlord.
Patience, Haroldor. I need you to heal him. And Immaril is still unaccounted for. We'll need her to face Rilis.
Veronal lives. For now. We are thankful for your help, stranger. But if I were you, I would have fled long ago. The Keepers and I, we must stop Rilis. At any cost.
There's one Keeper left, and I worry for her. Immaril guards the area closest to Rilis's prison. The two have a strained rapport. Of all of us, the High Kinlord would bear the fiercest grudge against Immaril. The sooner you find her, the better.
Where is she?
She's in the deepest part of the Banished cells. I have conceived the beginnings of a spell to handle Rilis, and we'll need Immaril if it's going to succeed.
What's the plan?
There isn't one yet. I still have details to work out. Just find Immaril, and we may be able to turn this against Rilis.
I'll find her. So what are we gonna do with our 12? The fundamental problem that Keepers have is one that you and I know well. In Tamriel, someone being dead, and that's air quotes, does not necessarily mean gone. Which means that with some bad guys, execution isn't really an option. They'll still be a problem, and usually a more complicated problem than they were before. The only feasible solution becomes some kind of magic box, be it a soul gem, or a warded prison, or some kind of a mechanical construct. But the box needs to be not only impregnable, but also eternal. And good luck with that, because A, entropy, and B, this is Tamriel. It is not a stable place. It is the sort of thing where plane melds can happen. It is very, very difficult to account for all the variables. Just ask Vanus. So even at best, it is not a perfect system. But also, as you and I know from extensive experience, a sentient being trapped in a box for centuries will definitely become bat guano insane. Like, even more so than they were before. So when the box opens, as it eventually will, the bad guy is going to be a bigger problem. And that's essentially what's happened here. I don't know about you, but I have complete confidence in Syrian's ability to solve a problem no one on Nirn has been able to solve. There is so much in that last chapter. Right up these stairs, though, we have another keeper, a boss, a room full of Daedra, and then Syrian will come in and tell us about his plan.
Over there, Veronal. We found her.
I see her. Let's hope she lives. We'll need her before the day is done.
Even if we defeat him, how do we contain him? He's already escaped once. If we could control Daedric magic, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. What do you think, Syrian? Fight fire with fire?
Stay your tongue, Veronal! You insult your lineage by even thinking it. Does the High Kinlord's fate appeal to you so? We go with my plan and divide his essence among us. He can't escape his prison, if he's not whole.
Araldor and I will tend to Immeror. Speak to Sirion.
Sorry, need to focus. Immeril's going to be fine, but she'll need a healthy dose of restoration magic to get back on her feet. If you must speak, speak with Sirion.
We're fortunate no one has perished, but I fear my keepers have grown desperate and cowardly. Did you hear Varanil's remark? Use Daedric power? Sacrilegious. We need to get Rilis back in his prison before my keepers do something they'll regret.
How can I help?
Before he escaped, we kept Rilis's soul encased in a single binding stone, passed down by the keepers. For ages, it was his prison. We're going to put him back, but this time, he's going in pieces.
Horcruxes, huh?
It's not as macabre as it sounds. He has no body. I speak of his soul. The keepers will siphon his essence into not one, but 4 binding stones, to keep his power divided. He'll hardly be conscious in that state, let alone able to summon Daedra.
What do you need from me?
You have the most difficult task of all. I need you to find Rilis and defeat him, if you can.
I'll go fight your bad guy. Now, I don't pretend to know the solution, but I will say that no matter who you are, or what the situation, Horcrux should never be your first option. And if it is your only option, you are having a legit bad day. Before we entered that last room, we found the 3rd chapter of R12's manifesto, and down here is chapter 4. In chapter 3, he writes about the despair of his existence driving him to become BFFs with Moloch Ball, which is exactly the problem I'm talking about with magical boxes and locking people away for forever. R12 also says in chapter 3 that his master taught him to open a portal so that his subjects could meet him and be better. Everything is wrong with that sentence. Every single thing. But yeah, that's the explanation for the dolmen ring that was in the past room and the swarms of Daedra. R12 summoned them. Living used to cause him despair, but no longer, because as my body fades, oblivion seeps in to replace it with a new form, an eternal form. There's a lot of big puzzle pieces in those 2 chapters. Oblivion doesn't have tangible form on its own. It isn't so much that Rilis is being transformed as he is being hollowed out. It doesn't stop with him, though. Belief has a profoundly powerful effect on Nirn. Not only does Rilis believe the king is the land and the land is the king, but very nearly every person he has ever met in his life believes that. The fact that they didn't take his title suggests that the Altmer don't believe that that bond can be broken. R12 being consumed from within is being mirrored in these ruins as a consequence of that bond. It's probably why Moloch Ball has been keeping him alive. The Lord of Brutality has literally an infinite number of slaves. What makes R12 special is his bloodline. In Cold Harbor, he wouldn't be interesting, but trapped here on Nirn as a shell of his former self, trapped between these states of life and death, between this plane and that plane, between sanity and not, he serves very well as a threshold for Moloch Ball to cross over and corrupt the plane. Or doormat might be a better term, but either way, killing him is a waste of a good metaphor. Never underestimate the power of a metaphor in Elder Scrolls metaphysics. The other thing that you can call Rilis the 12th is Final Boss. At last we get to take him down, right here on the seam between our world and Oblivion.
Is that you, Sirion? I don't know how you defeated those Banekin, but I'll be glad to send more. Ah, it's the outsiders. So the Keepers are afraid to face me. Very well. You'll die in their stead. You think you've beaten me? How amusing. Haven't you noticed that the pact I've made protects me from death?
Ignore his words, Keepers. Begin the separation.
I'm not confident this will work, Sirion.
What are you lot doing? Oh, I do so love to see magic. Is that what this is? This isn't as grand as the spells I learned from the Daedra. But I don't expect much from mortal all. Remember, children, you'll never keep me here of your own accord. Not when the Daedra fight for me. Perhaps you'd fare better if you had Daedra on your side.
His madness nears delirium. Ignore him, Keepers. Bind the High Kinlord.
By the light Imperium, the keepers of the banished cells hereby condemn Rilis the 12th to imprisonment unending.
Oh my! It looks like you've won! Old Rilis' days of freedom are over, it seems.
I thought you said this bastard wouldn't be able to speak.
He shouldn't be able to achieve coherent thought. We'll have to watch him carefully. The prison's not perfect, yet, but we have time, and Rilis isn't going anywhere.
But for real, though?
I'll make sure of it. Thanks to you, Rilis will never see Tamriel again. The situation would be dire had he escaped to the surface.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
You have been a boon to us. We Keepers would have failed our people if it weren't for you. We'll have to continue to refine Rilis' prison, but even the Daedra should have trouble breaking him free from 4 binding stones.
Absolutely. Well, heck, I'm convinced Sirion's totally got this. And I know the question that raises. Zells, I hear you asking. How can there possibly be a part 2 when Sirion has this thing so completely wrapped up? Here's my guess. I think Sirion's going to invite us back for a celebratory tea party when they finish the renovations to fix all of those holes in the time-space continuum that they've got. Let's go look at our loot. The medium armor set in Banished Cells gives a constant speed bonus. It's called Jailbreaker. It's super useful for alts. Crafters, banker alts, farmers. It's a set worth collecting. What really pulled me in were the housing trophies. Usually the trophy is the final boss, unless the final boss is a person. We do not get to hang the heads of people on the walls of our homes, just monsters. Yeah, I know. Since we don't get Rilis, our trophy is Shadowrend. And that wraps up the prologue material and part 1 of the Banished Cells. Banished Cells part 2 is going to be posted at the same time, so you can go ahead and click through to that. If you had a good time, click the like button. If you really had a good time, click subscribe. I've got dozens more dungeons to go through. Thanks for joining me. I'm Zell. The channel is Zellspeak, and until next time, may all your loots be leet.